Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. Jeffrey Burke here. I am so glad you're here. We are doing another deep segment into the world of functional mushrooms. Of course, the functional mushrooms from Nammex, and of course, Bill Chioffi as my guest. I know you guys have been enjoying this. You've been sending me great feedbacks on our little one-on-ones and our deep dives. So thank you. Make sure you spread the word to everybody out there. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel and make sure everybody you know, whether you like them or not, they subscribe. We want them all on there because it helps to get visibility for my amazing guest, and I want them to be as visible as I possibly can get them. So help me welcome my guest. Hey, Bill.
Hey, Dr. J. What do you say?
Oh, not much. It was good to see you last weekend. We were at our Expo West. It was busy.
Busy show, big show. Year after year, it continues to grow and grow. I can't believe it. Yeah, I'm interested to hear what the actual attendance was this year.
It was pretty big, I got to tell you. You know, I've been to 43 of them, and and the two I didn't go to were the ones that were closed for the pandemic. It was the 45th anniversary -2. So it was really great. I've been able to see the metamorphosis of that show and how technology and new delivery systems and all that stuff has changed. And it's really funny to see people I know, and I look at their shirt to see what company they're with, because they have a tendency to hop around a little bit in our industry. And I usually kind of stay put. I'm like a Canadian goose. I like breed for life. And, but it was great to see you and see everybody from Nammex. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we had a great show. And since that show is largely for retail brands to showcase their products and talk to customers, we didn't do a whole lot of, just stop by visits for companies that requested to see us and tell us about new things. So really great place to do trend spotting. The trends were easy to see, and there were some things that I thought I would see more of, like creatine, that I didn't see a whole lot of, and expected to see a lot of protein and saw a lot of protein. So in different ways, formats, deliveries, and more discussion about health span in terms of longevity and wellness, meaning not just how long can you live, but how long can you live a healthy, active type life somehow. So yeah, all very progressive and things that I think will be very beneficial as we evolve in the nutrition community.
I agree. I think it was great. I met a lot of people, and I have quite a few people that want to do the podcast, and I'm welcoming them because I think, I said a long time ago that you never know where your savior message is going to come from or who it's going to come from or what they're doing with their life. It doesn't matter because messages come from where they're supposed to. So I like to open the door to people that have a message to share, and you never know what you're going to learn along the way. But today we're going to talk about Maitake, and some people know it as Hen of the Woods. But it is actually a very, very cool functional mushroom. Let's talk about it. Let's dig in.
Yeah. Well, I got one of our beautiful images of Maitake in the background to share. And this is a really interesting one. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude to Japanese scientists and people in Japan who have brought this forward both as a food and medicine, although it does have a history of being consumed as a wild food in China as well. But certainly modern science has benefited most from the research that the Japanese scientists have studied Maitake for. But really going back towards some of the folklore and history about Maitake and breaking down its name a little bit even. Mai in Japanese means to dance. and take, whenever you see take, shiitake, maitake, that means mushroom. So it literally means the dancing mushroom. And it refers back to how it is a little bit rare to find in the woods. And when people would stumble upon it, knowing it was such a good, valuable food, tasty, flavorful, held up well, had good weight to it, they would dance, enjoy to see this mushroom. So it kind of got named the dancing mushroom. So that's in Japanese, how we refer to that. And in Chinese, it's referred to as hui shu hua, which means gray tree flower. Very simple. Exactly what you would see growing out of a hardwood tree would be a flowering maitake like this. It very much does look like, I don't know, kind of looks like a hydrangea or something like this, like a big bursting flower. So so you can see going back into the tradition with this one as well as a food and how great it was to find this thing growing in the forest. There's even mythology that it was at one time during the Edo period in Japan, I think that's around the 1600s, that it was worth its weight in silver, that the royalty would pay the equivalent weight of how much ever fresh maitake you could bring them in silver. So a lot of history and folklore in Japan with this. And then, in terms of its value as a food, definitely in terms of mushroom content, has very good protein content. And you can also find this in the stores now, which I love as well with many of these species. So very flavorful. And I looked up some things from we do sensory panel profiles for all of our mushrooms. And we had a panel of experts in British Columbia that it normally does wine tasting, but there was some fermentation experts that do special tasting. And so we had all of our extracts profiled, and I pulled up some info about the maitake and some very interesting things there. The aroma they described was eucalyptus, cannabis, skunky herbal, candied tobacco / hash, roasted grilled vegetables, syrup and molasses, and ocean breeze. Isn't that interesting?
That's plethora.
I mean, it's so complex. And it also, as we talk about its chemistry a little, you'll see how complex the chemistry is. But they describe the color as clear, dark straw, light amber, pale chestnut. They describe the flavor as mushroom stock, French onion soup, beef vegetable broth, fishy smoked fish, fresh cut grass. And then the overall description was beautiful color with coastal saline aromas and flavors, reminiscent of eating fish and chips at the harbor, surprising herbal backbone with deep umami notes. And so it's just amazing how, a panel of experts will describe that. And that came from across some disciplines. And it was a very interesting study because I think those are the things that formulators are interested in when they make a product for a consumer is how's this going to taste? What can we do with it? What type of product will people eat on a daily basis or consume regularly? And a lot of people don't like to cook with mushrooms. So, when the powders get used in certain things, it's important, as you well know, to make them taste very good or play with those flavors to work with them. So, I think those are some interesting things that you can do with all your mushroom species, really, for qualitative purposes. They should have these umami type notes and flavors and rich colors and variations in colors. So
I like the spectrum of the flavors and also the appearance, and it wasn't locked in. It was like a spectrum of different thoughts and feelings and visuals to these people, or smells or aromas. I love that. It's a pretty big. It's a palette. It really is.
It is, and our palates are sensitized towards sweet, salty, and fat in the North American market anyway. And true. I would say kind of globally. But for nutrition in maitake, you've got the protein, you've got the complex carbohydrates, and that also comes in the form of the major actives, which are the beta glucans. Some very specific ones we'll talk about from maitake that have been studied. There's good amounts of vitamin D in maitake mushroom. Dietary fiber in soluble and insoluble dietary fiber. And actually complexed in all mushrooms is that source of dietary fiber, the chitinous cell walls that hold things together are chitin polysaccharide protein bound complexes, right? So these are the, sort of longer acting properties of mushrooms as really fibers with unique properties that help us adapt to our environment and modulate immunity. And I think the term I hear used when describing maitake's action in many of the mushrooms in terms of their immune function is a biological response modifier. Have you heard this term?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good way to think about the overall activity. And with maitake and studying the beta glucans, Professor Hiroki Namba in the 1980s discovered these complexes called proteoglucans. And so these are beta glucans, but bound to proteins. And Professor Namba found the maitake D fraction was one of these proteoglucans that he then was able to isolate from maitake mushroom extract and apply towards certain in vitro and in vivo clinical research models to prove its efficacy. And so in terms of activating certain types of functions like natural killer cell activity, macrophages, and IL-12, which is specific to sort of anti-tumor activity, did a lot of work on this. And so much of what modern science learned was from these very specific beta glucan fractions, really. The maitake D fraction, as you know, was a product in the marketplace and has been for quite some time. And if you've looked at this product in the marketplace, it is a little bit more expensive than other products, in fact. And so I think its price is a reflection of the fact that it's a specialized product that has been used for quite some time and does have clinical research. So they make no claims in the marketplace that would get them in any trouble, but it's something to look at. There is a true cost of quality, and many others in the industry are talking about this. So, but yeah, this is a very, very rich mushroom that's culinary. You can see how flavorful and you can do many things with it in cooking. But then also as a functional mushroom, it's quite powerful.
I've had maitake. I've had it in food. I've had it in stir fries and soups and things like that. Can you eat it raw?
I would not recommend eating. Sorry, a little tickle in my throat from talking so much at the show, I think. You should really, all mushrooms as we know them have been cooked. Really wouldn't eat it raw. I think some you could get away with eating small amounts sliced thin raw, but they should be cooked. And it doesn't have to be cooked for too long. There's some interesting dishes with maitake where you can just sort of sear the outside of it and get it real crisp on the outside, and then it sort of steams itself on the inside to cook it. And you do want that cooking to sort of break down the chitinous cell walls that are in a mushroom. That it's not going to hurt you, but it may make it a little tough on your digestion if you ate some of these raw. And so, typically these mushrooms, if you could not consume whatever you harvested fresh, you would want to dry it, right? And then the dried powder gets used in sauces, gravies, things that get cooked in water as a decoction, which is sort of how we prepared the dry mushrooms into an extract, is drying down through spray drying a decoction of the mushroom, so of the dried mushroom. So Yeah, probably not a good idea to eat this one fresh. Stir fry it up a little bit in your favorite oil.
Someone asked me the question. They said, is it possible that you could dehydrate these and then reconstitute them when you needed them?
I mean, yeah, you could totally dry them and then rehydrate them, but the texture would probably be something lost over time as it dried out and the cells shriveled up, and then you'd rehydrate it and it would be a little soggy, right? Wouldn't have the
Got it.
same vibrancy as cooking it fresh like it is right here. So, but yeah, if you had it dried, then reconstituting it, mostly how I see we eat when we're in China traveling. Um, I You're eating mushrooms and you probably don't even know it because they use tremella, for instance, to thicken sauces, and then shiitake and wood ear mushroom often as flavorings. So, yeah, you could rehydrate these, but again, be a little soggy afterwards, probably looking and tasting. If you're, it would, for me, it would probably mess my dish up more than it would improve its flavor.
Someone asked me this to ask you this question. If you are consuming a lot of mushrooms in your diet, is it still okay to use them in supplement form?
Well, what's your definition of how much?
Like they were
I mean, like
asking about
100 grams of fresh mushrooms fit in your hand, you know.
well, the question was, you go to these cultures where they have mushrooms a lot. Do they still supplement in either tinctures or powdered formulas in their diet as well?
Well, yeah, the scientists in me wants to see data on that, but I would think they don't. They're eating them every day, and this is kind of indicative in the marketplace in those countries where they don't sell as many types of supplements of things because they're consuming them on a daily basis. So if you're eating a soup with astragalus and goji berries and jujube dates and all types of cotinopsis and things in it, you're not going to buy that supplement, right? And if you're eating a whole lot of mushrooms 3 times a day, usually in all your meals, you probably wouldn't find the need to supplement with them. But like I said, I need to see some data.
That's where the conversation went. So I just wanted to make sure that we're thinking the same way. So let's say you're not eating the mushrooms and you decide you want to incorporate them into your, daily nutritional regimen. Are there certain people that are candidates for Maitake, or is it across the board beneficial to everybody?
Well, I think there is a universal nature to Maitake's applicability. If you're consuming it in anything other than a capsule, you want to consider those flavor profile things that I talked about. If you don't like umami type flavor, good Maitake should have that somewhere. Comes through in all of the different descriptions, right? Like some stronger than others, but so I try to shy away from making very specific health recommendations with the mushrooms, because I think when you're using them for anything other than just supporting your ongoing immune system needs, you should really be in the hands of a professional that can help you with the rest of your issues. Meaning, if you're currently treating a known medical condition that you have, you should be in the hands of a trained clinician to take guidance on dosage, type, interactions with other medications, what have you. But in general, I would say people who have struggled with weakened immunity for whatever reason are good candidates if they're not in a crisis mode for Maitake.
Yeah, I think
As a biological response modifier, meaning it's not necessarily like it's increasing any kind of innate activity or necessarily decreasing anything. And in that case, it does class similarly with some of the actions of adaptogens, although it is quite specific for immune function. So, but yeah, I think that I think most people could benefit from incorporating this one. And it's certainly part of a combination that we have at Nammex called the Five Defenders, which are all immune-oriented mushrooms that have known or have been used traditionally for immunity. One of those happens to be shiitake, which is one of the mushrooms most people have probably eaten, right? So, yeah, there's so much to say about each of these species, right? And Maitake, I think it actually is interesting though, because this is one of the first ones that's been tied specifically to its value in commerce, in foraging, and its importance in finding something unique and rare in the wild, right? Whether it's folklore or not, it's been handed down for generations, and there are huge mushroom companies in Japan that have sort of pioneered cultivation of this mushroom on sawdust logs in the early 80s, 70s, along with Dr. Namba's findings, knowing that they were going to need this. It's hard to find in the wild, so we're going to have to cultivate this one and have a lot of it because it was the mushroom, right? Like that's the fruiting body, as we say, I guess. But the mushroom is what people were looking for in the woods. And so, I think it's another one that touches on the value of integrating that technology into the modern supply chain. So you can't get as much of it from the wild. It may not be great to take it all from the wild. So what did they do? They invented agricultural techniques by which they could grow this and have a source of it repeatably to use. And that was done on sawdust logs. And then so they did log culture and bottle culture, meaning you've seen pictures of those enokis coming out of a bottle. Looks like a big milk bottle almost. But so, yeah, there's a number of ways to grow these. And I think similar to how our turkey tail really was only grown in the wild until Nammex 5-6 years ago went to farmers in China and invested in having those grown organically on farms instead of being wild harvested. And that's the turkey tail mushrooms are quite papery, woody texture, and so they're not really a culinary mushroom. So they weren't one that was also being grown like lion's mane, which does have many culinary properties as well, right? So it was a first, and mushrooms are. It's amazing to see the variety of things they do with them in Japan and China, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos. All these areas have been incorporating mushrooms for way longer than we have in the West. So a lot of cues that we can take from those cultures.
Well, the maitake seems to be a substantial size mushroom. And does it take a long time to grow to that size, or is it a fast-growing mushroom?
It can grow pretty quickly. I mean, it depends on all of the ecological factors for it. But on this last trip, some of them that we were picking up, they must have weighed 15, 20 kilos.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it'll be like 30, 40 pounds. You're holding it like this. And so, with the right conditions, they can get quite large. But I would say it'd be pretty rare to find one like that, if you were to stumble upon it in a forest scenario. Although people do all the time, if you go to the forager sites, you'll see giant maitakes, and I can imagine they danced when they saw that.
I can think so. Somebody asked me these two questions. They said, number one, how do you know when it's time to harvest them? Do you wait for a size? Is it a duration of time? And how do you know when it's time to harvest? Number one. And number two, if they get too old and you wait too long, do they lose their benefit?
Yeah, I mean, again, that depending on the species, right? For maitake, it can get kind of eaten by things, slugs, and things like to eat it. It's nutritious, including other microbes as it starts to decompose. But it's the fruiting cycle of the mushroom when it's producing and sporulating and producing its reproductive materials does not last as long as the mycelia lasts in the ground. And so that is where there's this window where you have to find the mushroom in the wild while it's still good and fresh. And it's a little too, we would need to do a whole class on how to identify properly as to when to get it. But let's say from when you could first identify it starting to come out of the log until it was a sizable amount where you felt like it was enough to take and eat. And then normally you're not taking the whole thing because it can get quite large. It sort of starts to get larger and larger until it meets a diminishing return at some point because of ecological conditions and its growth cycle. And then it just is gone because it's produced as many spores as it's needed to keep the cycle continued.
So, like where I'm from the Midwest, and we would go and cut down asparagus because they grew wild everywhere we were. So we would cut them down. We didn't uproot them. We would just cut them down. And every year they came back again and came back again. And we would let some of them kind of go to seed, and then you'd have a lot more the next year. But they grew out in the woods and everything right near us, and we knew where to go every year. So the mushrooms, if they are harvested in the wild, do they automatically come back? And do they come back the same way, or did they seed in the area? Do they spread when they're seeding and putting out spores?
They're, again, each one is different, and I'll say that each time. But if they're allowed to make spores and sporulate in the forest, then yes, they've continued to do their job. Is it guaranteed that they'll come back? Those spores have to meet up with each other and have a good food source, which is some type of hard wood or decaying wood matter or leafy wood matter at least, or depending on the species, it could be a root of a tree. And those are some of the most important interactions, actually, the ones that you'll hear about called ectomycorrhizal fungi, which are some of them not even mushrooms, but very important to the soil and forest health, right? So, but the types of mushrooms that we're looking at, polypores, and like a reishi, for instance, if you harvested, let's say you came upon a hemlock back on the East Coast and you saw hemlock reishis growing and you harvested all of those before they had a chance to sporulate, there's going to be that many billions of less spores available for that Ganoderma tsuge to take over. And so that's something to consider in terms of foraging. Mushrooms are very successful reproducers, right? So as long as there is a good source of decaying wood matter, they will thrive. And so, I think of where I moved from in Asheville, where, we lost up to 40% of the canopy from a hurricane. And there's a huge job for the forest to recover. And it starts in the soil and the decaying tree matter that's there and the fungi that are in the soil and growing as mushrooms again now on trees. So be interested to check in with some of my colleagues there and see what the spring mushroom season holds, and in the fall would be even more informative, I think. But these are things in the environment first, right? Like everything, the importance of using regenerative organic practices or organic practices is first for the tilth of the earth. And by that benefit, then you can get healthier foods, yes, but the primary benefit is to give back to the planet first that you're taking food or whatever from. So if you carry that mindset into foraging, that's you'll see that in different forums as people start to get more educated about wild harvesting and foraging and safety again too. Like you have to know how to identify these in the wild before you just go start picking them. because, they can be harmful if you get the wrong species, and some are much more harmful than others. So
Do you find that they prefer a certain climate? Are they more of like an Oregon type Washington climate, or are they more can they survive and grow in a drier climate? They have a preference?
definitely need hardwood temperate forest for it. So, I'm most familiar with seeing them in the Northeast forests, and I haven't seen too many in the North. Like I grew up in Vermont and spent quite a bit of time in the Boston area and New Hampshire forest, Vermont forest, and yeah, they're definitely around. But yeah, that's where you would expect to see them.
My
They
grandmother
don't
used
really
to,
prefer pines or dry territories.
my grandmother used to pick these. We had them in the woods, in the wooded areas in Michigan when I was growing up, and my grandmother used to pick them. She loved them. It was her favorite mushroom, and she would saute them up, and then it was amazing. They were delicious.
Yeah.
We grew up on these, so I think they're wonderful, and I don't remember
Did she
ever
call
eating
them Maitake, or did she call them hen of the woods?
hen of the woods.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, that's what she used to call them. That's what we learned when we were kids. So they were always hen of the woods to us.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they were amazing. But they grew very, very densely in these wooded areas. And, as trees came down, it's just the trees, it was just a perfect environment for them to grow.
Yeah, the other, whatever, poultry of the woods, chicken of the woods,
Mm-hmm.
it's a sulfur colored mushroom that kind of grows a little bit like maitake, but that can get quite big too. I've seen huge ones of those in North Carolina, and that one's really hardy, and it really does take. I mean, it's a thick textured mushroom, chicken of the woods, and it's very. You get one and you kind of end up giving a lot of it away because you can only eat so much of it sautéed fresh. And I haven't really tried drying it before to use it at all, but yeah, that's one that's an interesting one. Don't really see it they do cultivate it in some areas in China, but it's not all that popular.
It's interesting because every time we do another functional mushroom and we talk about them, it's just, people say all the time.
You can't leave the other ones out, right? We have to talk about all of these.
Well, people are like, well, how do you choose? And I've said, well, I take a lot, because I want the benefits. And the thing about the formula you were talking about, the blended combination that you have, it's amazing how the synergism between them, they're all able to shine on their own, but they do shine as well or better together in a grouping too.
Yeah, I totally believe that's true. And then, eating them on a regular basis too. And that's what's great about the products like Kokora's products that you're making, and that they do encourage people to incorporate them in daily foods, smoothies, breads, popcorn recipes. Really great. You wouldn't even know you were eating these, and that's where they're great for also for kids. And younger generation doesn't necessarily want to take a pill like our generation is used to doing. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. It's funny is I have a friend of mine, and him and his family were born and they were raised in China, and they were there for they have 3 kids. They were there till probably their late 30s, and they moved over here stateside. And when they first got here, they were continuing to eat the diet and everything that they ate when they were in China. And after a couple of years, they definitely got westernized and started eating the unhealthy foods that we eat here. And their health took a toll. And so much to the point where they really had to kind of do a reversal of what they were consuming, because they had eaten so healthy for so long. And it was just their bodies did not do well with the standard American diet. It didn't do well.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, if you ask those two people whether they thought they were eating healthy before, they probably would have said, we just ate a regular diet. So, it's all in how you compare those two cultures. Fresh foods, healthy foods, things that are not processed are primary in their diet, not secondary.
Well, they'd be the first to say that, we just ate the way that everybody ate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the way we did it, but they were never sick. They never had any problems. And they got here and started eating this. They all started having gastric problems, and his blood pressure went up from all the sodium and all that kind of stuff. So as of about a month ago, they were moving back home. Mm-hmm. They were going back to China because it was a job transfer as well. But he said, I think we need to incorporate the diet that our body does the best with. And I think that's interesting. If somebody was to ask you the best mushroom to pair with maitake, would that be shiitake?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I think that the less complex in mushroom combinations, the better. Anything more than 5 or 6, I don't know, there's a lot of 8, 9, 10 mushroom, 12, how many are we going to have before each one doesn't have enough? That is sort of dependent upon how you're delivering it, what type of delivery it is, if it's a capsule or if your gummies are very popular right now. So what I think is good about the modern analytical methods is that the scientists are working hard at how to determine activity in these deliveries, like a gummy, for instance, because we don't really know. The botanicals get mixed in there, but then that's a big gelatinous product that has to set as well. And so you need to be sure when we're taking these gummies that each dose is giving you the same thing. We know this in a capsule delivery, right? Or even in dried powders. But so I think it is interesting that delivery methods have outpaced analytical methods to determine them. So this is something where leaning into brands that have integrity in their sourcing is more and more important.
So, no, this was great. I'm glad we took the time to talk about this today because I think it's a really, really interesting mushroom. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to do these little deep segments because I think it's really been very beneficial. There's been a lot of education missing in the industry the last couple of years, and this is a really great refresher course for us older individuals that have forgotten more than what we remember, and for the younger group that may have never learned it at all. So very thankful for that. Leave us with a thought of the day.
Probably said this before, but I think it just pays to operate with kindness first in mind. And that's always a good thought for the day, So there is a lot of tension in the world caused by things that are beyond our control. But what we do have control over is how we respond and go about things in our daily life with our friends, colleagues, coworkers, and just remembering that, everybody's got their things going on in their life that affects them, and being kind helps.
I think I agree 100%. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, I have a friend going through these problems and I don't know what to say. I said, did you ever think that just being present was all you really need to do? Yeah. I said, sometimes it's not there about fixing or judging or giving a solution. Sometimes it's just there to be present, to let the person know there's someone there in their court. So I think that's important. But I love that. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I do. I'd love to get to do these with Bill. I think he's a master of dialogue, and he's got just a wonderful handle on mushrooms. I hope you get time to go back and listen to the other ones as well. Remember, you can listen to the shows on any platform. Of course, go to my YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe, click a button, and that way we get more visibility. But you'll see everything there. You'll be able to watch the interviews there as well. It's just Honest Health with Jeffrey Burke on YouTube. And I hope that you'll learn something and walk away, even if it's just with one little tidbit of information. Sometimes that one little piece can be very life-changing. Bill, I want to thank you for being here today. I always appreciate you having on.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too, my friend. Be well, everybody. Take care, and God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.